Terry Liggins, Hurdle Life Coach, here for another recap and discussion of the For Life episode series on ABC. Really interesting time in our country with all of the things that are really happening around our country with COVID-19. So many different things to adapt to, work with, keep up with. I know myself, I'm feeling the challenges as well of keeping any type of consistency to my day, to my week. Things are changing moment to moment, hour to hour. Things are just constantly just changing, especially here in the state of South Dakota where I'm at. We're seeing a spike in positive COVID-19 cases. So many efforts are being suggested and people are practicing all of the necessary precautions, doing their social distancing. Companies have, limited their patron numbers and etc. But despite all of the efforts that have been implemented here in South Dakota, we're currently seeing a spike here in the community in which I live in, which is in Sioux Falls. And so it's just really unprecedented times. That is what people are calling it, and that's exactly what it is. It truly is unprecedented to be in this type of environment, the age of social distancing, the age of school being canceled to the end of the year. I'm also a father of a school-age little girl, and just really managing and being called to the responsibility of being an active parent in this time while being a full-time consultant, educator, speaker, whose business truly has been limited and impacted by all of what's going on. However, one thing I have been able to stay consistent in, and what I've been looking forward to through this, is continuing to come back here every Tuesday to share this time with the Hurdle Life Coach followers, those who are following the work of our education, of our advocacy, and who have been tuning in with us for 9 weeks now, maybe even 10 weeks now. So we're getting close to the end here. It's a 12-week series is what I understand. I think we're really going to see what really happens with Isaac Wright Jr. Well, Aaron Wallace is his name, but the series is inspired by a guy named Isaac Wright Jr. So I think we're going to be seeing what happens with him very soon, because here we are on week 10 and having this conversation about the things we're seeing, the things that the series is highlighting. What type of things are they bringing to light for us to take a look at and be mindful of as people who care about community, as people who care about what's the condition that our criminal justice system is in. And even as I opened up this conversation, this dialogue, this interaction with conversation around COVID-19, that is another place that truly is having a huge impact on the criminal justice system, the COVID-19 crises and scenarios when it comes to how our country, our criminal justice system is responding to individuals who are incarcerated right now. And so definitely another alignment in regards to the people who are here on the Hurdle Life page, just following along with the journey of me as a coach, facilitator, and educator. Been doing it as the Hurdle Life Coach for over a year now full-time doing the work, and appreciate those that are continuing to chime in each week and to just keep encouraging the efforts and the programs and initiatives of the Hurdle Life Coach. You are deeply appreciated. Again, this program, we've been doing it for about 10 weeks, looking forward to it each week, giving me some type of consistency through these unprecedented times. So in jumping into some of the things that were happening in today's episode, what I really noticed is there was a lot of story. There wasn't a lot that happened in the courts. Of course, there was the court scene and what happened in the courts, which was good when we saw essentially an exoneration occur. We saw an attorney general at the end of the episode use his power and authority to overturn 6 convictions. So that was good. There was some some court action as well, and I'm actually going to say a little bit about exonerations later. But what I noticed more in this episode was a lot of the story that is being told. Really, a lot of the emotion, a lot of the interaction, a lot of the politics that are involved in work, in life, in criminal justice. It's interesting to see the dynamic between the captain and the warden right now. And the warden has really been shaken up by witnessing what it is to see a senior official within a criminal justice system, a captain, be manipulated, be controlled, be bought, be controlled really by another inmate in the prison with Cassius Dawkins, who sent goons to his home, threatened him with fear, and now has control. And what she saw was the captain perjure and essentially make up things about an incident that wasn't there. And she, like most of us, want to believe that, people in the face of hard choices when it comes to ethics and morals, that we always choose what's right. But there are certain situations and certain circumstances where it's difficult to do what you know it's right. And when fear is involved and threat and violence and stuff, it gets tricky. And so the captain has been controlled, is now under the control of the inmate Cassius Dawkins. And the warden knows that. And she's trying to get to the bottom of things. She wants to get things to be in order. She wants to also maintain the sense of compassion that she wants the institution to have. But you can't have professionals, correctional officers who are in there bending the law, manipulating the law, the order of things. And so it was just really interesting to see their interaction. He never confessed to being the distributor or the smuggler of the drugs into the institution, but she had her assumptions, her intuitions, her leads to really peg that he was the source of the smuggling of the drugs. And when she brought him in, she spoke to him in a very assumptive way. She didn't ask for a confession. She spoke with the certainty that, I know that you bring in drugs. I know that your little operation that you think is under the radar is not. And to really watch that interaction and see it unfold, but also see it unfold into the way where even when the assumption was made by the warden, the captain still was like, knew his own rights and knew enough about the system to not just give right in to her angle. And he's like, you know what? I resign. How about that? And I'll give you my 2 weeks and stuff. And so it was really tricky, really interesting to see that interaction. Is interesting to see that power dynamics. Interesting to see the power dynamics amongst the inmates as well. I was really impressed this week with Aaron Wallace. Aaron Wallace, or inspired by Isaac Wright Jr. I just saw him and see him speaking with so much authority and confidence. And I just was imagining to myself, I was thinking, like, how hard must that be to be able to turn on that level of identity quickly, and whether it goes from, inmate to lawyer in the courts, but also really just in the face of, Henry. Henry is the guy who helps Aaron Wallace. I think his last name is Gaskins. I think I wrote it down somewhere. But Henry, I got his last name somewhere in here. But, because him and Henry and Aaron were going back and forth with a dynamic. For me, I really look at this series and this episode, even life. Like, yeah, I look at what I can learn from a criminal justice systematic approach, but I'm also very much tuning into what the social interaction is about things, kind of the social intelligence approach to it, and really watching social interaction. So for me, forgive me that, we'll get into some of the weeds about the system. I promise you that. But really, this social interaction I find very interesting and fascinating for me, and has been for a while. So, the interaction between Henry and Aaron, I'm watching that power dynamic. I'm watching Aaron speak with confidence and authority, knowing who he is, based on the investment that he's made into himself. And that's something that we can carry with us as well. We can speak with authority and confidence. We have to allow ourselves not to be shaken by our external environments when we know of the energy and the investment and the information that we put into ourselves or others have put into us. We've got excellent mentors and guides and parents and mentors who have poured into us, and oftentimes we allow our external environment to dictate who we are. And I'm so inspired by seeing Aaron Wallace speak to who he is in being an actual lawyer. He tells Henry, he said, we are his lawyers, and we've got a duty to this. And I was just so impressed that he was able to do that, even while being in the inmate clothes and locked away in that institution. He did that again somewhere else in the episode too. I watched him speak with that level of authority. I mean, obviously he does it every time he's in the courtroom, but I think there was another incident that really stood out to me, that he just spoke with the true identity of who he know himself to be, and I really was inspired by that. So I thought that was worth noting. The dynamic between him and his client, of course, there was interesting dynamics and power there. Not a lot about Cassius Dawkins this episode. It was a lot about him last episode and some of his power dynamics and things that he utilized to get control and order. This one was more about the individual who was released. Trying to find his name. The guy who Aaron Wallace was representing today. So, but their dynamics, that was interesting as well. So let's get into some of the criminal justice factors of things. Something to really take note of. So really this episode came down to and was really focused on helping a person who was convicted to, I believe the man had life, but he was definitely in prison for 23 years already. And what they wanted to accomplish was an exoneration. What is an exoneration? For those who haven't studied criminal justice or know all the terminology, what exactly is an exoneration? Well, a DNA exoneration is a case in which post-conviction DNA testing results were central to establishing the innocence of a wrongfully convicted individual. And so the DNA testing results were dispositive of actual innocence and central to vacating the conviction and or the dismissing of the indictment. The indictment must have been dismissed or the defendant pardoned on the grounds of innocence or acquittal at a retrial. So this was actually information that was sent to me. We were looking into the Innocence Project, which is a group out there that focuses on overturning convictions of individuals who have been sentenced to life in prison. As of September 2019, the Innocence Project has 365 DNA exonerated cases in the United States. 365. Including 20 death row inmates who were on death row and then were exonerated. Although the individuals involved in these cases were innocent of the crime based on the DNA exoneration, actually 25% of them had confessed or admitted guilt, and 11% had actually pled guilty to these crimes. And it really just speaks to what we've seen before in some of these episodes and what happens actually in our system when it comes to the pressure that is put on individuals when they are then charged with crimes and given options to either take it to trial or plead out. And so in some of these cases, individuals who were innocent and afraid to take it to trial to prove their innocence even pled guilty. 25% of them had confessed or admitted guilt, and 11% had pled guilty. The exoneree spent an average of 14 years in prison. with 10% serving 25 years or more. Are you kidding me? Reading it a second time is that much harder, and third time and fourth time, because what do you mean 10% of them serving 25 years or more? Are you trying to tell me there's people who have served 25 years in prison and were innocent, and then were exonerated based on DNA evidence? DNA evidence? Yikes. But it also speaks to what we're capable of in today's criminal justice system versus what we were not capable of years and years and years ago. You know, I think we can, I guess. No, I can't. I can't pardon the misconduct, the malfeasance, the unethical behavior. I understand that it wasn't a day and age where DNA testing was so readily available and internet was a thing, but man, wrong is wrong and right is right, and when you're sending innocent people to prison and jail, that's just wrong, no matter when it happened. So it's really disturbing to know that as of 2019, 300 DNA exoneration cases happened with the Innocence Project. 20 of them were on death row. 25% had admitted guilt or confessed. 11% pled guilty. The exonerees spent on average 14 years in prison, with 10% doing 25 years or more. Just sad. So the purpose of the show today was to work to get an exoneration for the Aaron Wallace's client. I thought something else was which they ultimately got. By the way, well, actually, they didn't have to even go that far into the DNA. He got a motion for the DNA for the duct tape to be sent to the lab, and that was enough to shake up the current attorney general to overturn 6 convictions. But also what we saw was the family continuing to be consumed by incarceration. It's something that I've spoken to and I'll continue to speak to, that there's an impact of incarceration on family. If you have any type of empathy in you, you are feeling for the wife and daughter of Aaron Wallace and how much they're consumed by his absence. You know, how they are helping to research the case, how they are spending time in their own anxiety and worry, how they are in this episode created a Facebook account whereby free Aaron Wallace. And that was pretty interesting to see that in this day and age, lay individuals are able to truly investigate and do some of the work of our law enforcement, you know. And it's like, you want to look at law enforcement officers or detectives and say how much that they aren't doing, and maybe that they're failing in some type of way. But I know in reality, you know, they're swamped at the same time. And in some cases, maybe they aren't, and they just aren't really leaning into the resources that they could. I want to be optimistic in this and really believe that we just need to get more good people on the force, and we need to do more training of our law enforcement officers to be able to use all of the tools that we have at our disposal. Because with the internet and all these different ways to really find information and share information, you could see the daughter, the mother, the daughter's boyfriend. They were all able to contribute in a meaningful way to really do some investigative processing of the case. And so that was something that I also thought was worth mentioning, is just how lay individuals are actually able to get involved in doing investigative work, and podcasters and authors proving the innocence and solving cold cases. This is, again, as community members, we can rally, we can gather, we can share information, we can do the work. You know, I'm going to continue to be flushing out this concept of community justice. You know, when we go to college and school for this stuff, it's called criminal justice. I think what we have an opportunity to do here is to stretch the conversation beyond criminal justice and say, what does justice look like in a community? What does that type of interaction look like when we have a community justice? And not only does that look like how we treat people when they come home from jail or prison, but how do we engage our criminal justice system that it is operating with balance, with fairness, with equality and equitability, and not being unjust. We can engage in a community justice process. Very impressed with Henry doing some good personal investigative work. He found that lady who changed her identification. Changed her ID, changed her identity, changed her identity. So it was just interesting to maybe kind of feed into some of the drama of what the PI work that Henry was doing for the sake of moral good. And he's getting a hard time. He's getting a hard time by all his friends from turning his life around, getting sober, and doing the right thing. But I really like how Aaron Wallace is reminding Henry and even himself that this is about the person in front of us. This is about the client in front of us. This is about the person in front of us. This is about the client in front of us. So often, people are misperceived in their human service work to think that the reason we do this work is so that we feel good and that people can give us a pat on the back. The reality is the reason we do the work is for the person that's right in front of us. And that's exactly the way it needs to be. Each one, teach one, reach one, teach a few, reach a few. But we've got to do it one person at a time, and we've got to be able to have that level of focus to be able to look at another human being and say, you matter. And this is why I'm doing this, because of you, not because of the job description, not because of the paycheck, not because of all my wants and my dreams and my why and what I'm going to do with my own income and all those things. Those things can be underlining motivators. But at the end of the day, when you're in human service work, you got to do it because you care about the person right in front of you. And you believe in seeing good things happen for good people. I know that's my motivation. That keeps me going when I'm able to interact with people one-on-one or one on a few and still just pour into that group of individuals or pour into that one person and say, you matter and that your life matters and you have potential and you can do it. And here's how we can. Here's how you can. And so I really like how Aaron Wallace was really helping everyone, the viewers included, to be mindful that this human service work is about the person in front of you. It's not about ourselves. It's about the person in front of us. Thought that was pretty cool. Power of social media, I talked about that. And Aaron Wallace, authority. The world of favor in politics, man, it kind of disgusts me. At the end of the day, that one guy's like, don't you owe me? It's just, we gotta really watch how people play politics. It gets a little dirty. It gets a little personal. And we, as we step into that realm of leaders and influencers and possibly politicians in our own lives, let's play fair. Let's do good. Let's make it about community and not about ourselves. It's not about owing each other. It's interesting to see this pathway of the current district attorney, Glenn Maskins, who's trying to be the attorney general. And we know that the warden's wife is also trying to be the attorney general. But Glenn Maskin is now the district attorney trying to be attorney general. He once was the former assistant district attorney for all those years. And we're watching how the politics play. And now all of a sudden you got a man who might be the attorney general, but has a history of not maybe playing so fair, playing a little dirty. But all of a sudden playing dirty keeps you moving forward. And we got to nip that. We got to change that. We've got to be able to pluck out and pick out, filter out individuals that are playing politics dirty. We, in our representative democracy, when we elect people to represent us, it's not that they would have their best interests in mind, but our interests in mind, and that they would operate and make choices based on the interests of their constituents, not of their own pocketbook or personal comfort and well-being. And if you have an individual that is, doing certain things that are just only for their personal benefit and continuing to rise in the ranks of politics, we continue to see the same cycle, and we need to interrupt that. And so, the world of politics and favors, we need to be able to interrupt that and just operate with a real moral balance that says we're going to do good for people, we're going to do good for community, and that's what our That's what our goal, that's what our aim is. I do want to say a little bit about what it takes to be a credible witness, or how people misperceive that, especially when it comes to trauma. I encourage everyone to really look into adverse childhood experiences, ACEs, the ACE study, traumatic events in childhood, neuroscience, how that affects the brain, what type of behaviors are our response to traumatic events, how important safety and security is, choice, peer association, these things when it comes to trauma. But sometimes witnesses aren't deemed as credible when they have a disassociation with their traumatic event. Well, disassociation is a very normal response to being a survivor of a traumatic event. And we have to know that. We have to know that just because a person isn't expressing a deep emotional connection to an event doesn't mean that that event wasn't a real severe incident that happened and a traumatic event that occurred. That disassociation is actually a very normal response to a survivor of traumatic events. And so it's really understanding trauma and really recognizing when we're seeing a response to a traumatic event versus thinking that a person is lying, or they're not credible, or they're not believable. You got to understand trauma to get an understanding of why people act a certain type of way. And you would be surprised, actually, if you do your own introspection in regards to what type of adversities you've seen in your own life. You would then be able to see that the mannerisms and behaviors that you have are actually in a response to the experiences that you went through as well. Whether you call them traumatic or not, whether they're an adverse childhood experience or not, that can be determined. There's a filter you can send your experiences through. But ACEs are very common when you're talking about parental separation and divorce, when you're talking about having a family member who is involved with the criminal justice system in some type of way, when you're talking about mental illness in their home or substance abuse in the home, different forms of abuse and neglect and physical abuse, all these different things that, depending on your upbringing, were very common to experience traumatic events in childhood without even recognizing that they were traumatic events. I know for me, that was my story, not recognizing that some of the things that I went through were actually traumatic events until I began to do that work. So I encourage all of us to do that work for ourselves, but also to be mindful of other individuals who are survivors of adverse experiences and traumatic events, and what that response looked like when they're testifying in court, when they're working in the community, or as parents too. Henry said he told that woman, the witness, that she was so courageous, and I just want to second that and commend that. It's a deep act of courage to get up in front of a court and testify. That is one of the hardest things to do. There's a lot of pressure in that environment, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of fear, and definitely she's commended for her courage in that. One quote my friend sent to me while watching the show with me, I really appreciate people that are engaging with it. My friend Lisa says, "You may have just saved the rest of that man's life." And that was a strong and powerful statement at the end of the episode here. And it really kind of goes into the final thing that I'm going to kind of mention before I close up with anything else, was that it had to be also hard for Aaron Wallace to see individuals being released that he's represented, knowing that he in himself feels and knows he's an innocent man. And here he is working with other individuals and getting their convictions overturned and watching them be released. Such a moral good that he's doing for these individuals, and keeping himself in control to focus on that moral good. Even in the end, where he's pushing back between Henry a bit and saying, you know what, best interest of the client, even though there's some personal vendettas that people want to address and do. I just think that it's so inspiring to watch Aaron Wallace stay in control of being morally sound, and the words that was given to him as that individual was leaving the prison. He says, make a difference no matter where you are. And my friend Lisa again comments on that, and I was very inspired by that, and I think that is a reminder to all of us, even me, even now. It's really hard to feel big in this world right now, with COVID-19 being much bigger than all of us. It's really hard to feel big. It's really hard to feel as if there's a difference that can be made by your one individual life, by your one individual social distancing or precaution. How many times do I wash my hands? What do I disinfect? All these different things. It's really hard to feel big in this world that we're in right now of COVID-19. And that was just a really humbling reminder to make a difference no matter where you are. And so I know that I'm going to continue to remind myself of that, really stay committed to what it is that we're doing here at the Hurdle Life Coach, soon to be also Hurdle Life Nonprofit Incorporated, focusing in on continuing to have this type of interaction with the followers of the Hurdle Life Coach, and continuing to build out the program that I'm designing called Change to help adults in transition and at-risk youth, and just focus on what I can. And while we are isolating to our homes and using the internet to connect, let's just keep doing that. Let's just keep pushing out the positivity. I know I need it. I should be doing more of it, but I'm like most of you out there, still trying to figure out and find my way through all of this. But I really appreciated that word at the end to make a difference no matter where you are. So we'll do it again next week. Aaron Wallace killed it when he was in the courtroom again, doing this thing. So inspiring just to see, an individual who the society wanted to write off, give him life in prison. This guy became a lawyer. I still haven't done the research to look into Isaac Wright Jr. because I just want to be on this journey with all of you as well. I'm going to look into it once everything is all done. I'm hoping for the best. I hope he gets out. Does he get out? I'm really hoping so. But it's been great. Hard to be consistent in these times. Find a way to be consistent. Get a couple things and be consistent to them. Stay healthy. Keep practicing the social distancing. Do what we can to help flatten the curve. And let's just keep hoping for the best, believing in the best, and praying for our nation and our leaders in government. There's so much pressure that everyone's under right now. What we need is grace, that's for sure. So with that, thank you those who have came in. I love it. I appreciate it. We'll do it again next week. I think we got 2 or 3 more weeks of this to go. And I'll definitely be back here next week to talk about what's going on in the criminal justice system and how we all can continue to hurdle life. All right. Thank y'all. Talk to you next week.